Good afternoon. It's Felicia Moore, your Atlanta City Council President, and welcome to another Conversations with the Council President. It's 1 o'clock and we are live, and I hope if you are not able to see this video live that you will always take the opportunity later to tune in and to check it out. So since we're just getting started, I'm going to give everybody a minute to join in. Hope everyone is following the stay-at-home order. I mean, I know you have to get food, you have to get groceries, which you can get delivered, and your prescription medications, you can get those delivered. You really don't need to travel out if you don't have to, but if you do, please make sure you're doing it safely, making sure you're washing your hands and contaminating yourself potentially when you come into your home. Make sure now that, and I've been doing it, but now there is a national push to have people to wear a mask or a face covering when you go out in public. This is very important. They're not recommending that you get the medical grade mask, which are the N95 mask or other masks, which those masks will keep you from breathing in contaminants. But what they are requesting is that everyone wear a face covering over your nose and your mouth. You can make them at home out of many things. There are all kinds of videos out there showing you how you can make these masks. I've also posted some of those on my site, so you can see how to do that, or you can go to YouTube or Google it, how to make a mask. You can make them with material and things that you have in your very own home. A bandana will work. However, those masks, what they do is to keep you from spreading your droplets so that other people may get infected. Because many people are what they call asymptomatic, and that means they don't show symptoms. They have coronavirus and they don't know it, and they spread that through talking, through breathing, of course through coughing and sneezing, but it's not always a cough or a sneeze. And so the thought is, if everyone is covering their mouth and their nose, whether you have a medical grade mask or not, then it lessens the ability for people to be infected. We need to do everything that we can to keep this virus from spreading. So I hope that you are keeping up with the most current information and that you're utilizing it as well. So today I want to make sure, and of course I'll look for any questions or comments that you may have, but there's some things I want to update you on. Before I get on some of those updates, and please make sure, if you haven't already, if you're on some of my other pages, that you like Felicia A. Moore, Atlanta City Council President, and follow that page. I post information all the time, and we want to make sure you get every bit of the information. However, this is being shared on my personal Facebook page as well, so that everyone has an opportunity for this information, because information is important that we all receive. Want to remind you, Census 2020, you've received those. Make sure that you fill this out and send it in. I've been using it as a prop and had it in my other room. So today I'm going to fill out my census and send it in. I'm going to mail it in. You can mail it in, or you can go online to fill that out. Please, this COVID-19 should be an example as to why it's important, because we're not going to just be dealing with this year. We'll be dealing with it next year. They're talking about perhaps a resurgence of it. Of course, we haven't gotten through this first wave, but there may be a second. When money comes to from the federal government, a lot of times census data is used, most all times, it's used to determine how much money a city gets. If we don't have people counted, then we are going to have less people. For instance, our census data tells us that we are somewhere around 480,000 in population. Well, if everyone had been counted 10 years ago, we probably would have had more. If we were at the $500,000, it's not $5,000, $500 1,000 in population, we would be in line to get some of the federal money that's coming for this COVID-19. National League of Cities and other organizations are working hard to make sure the cities over 400,000 receive it, but we are shy of that. So that's why it's important. It's important for you to fill out that. Don't forget, Census 2020, and also ask your neighbors and friends. Please ask them if they filled it out. If you know seniors or others that may need some help, help them fill it out either online or in the mail. The other thing is voting. Because of COVID-19, voting date has been moved, and there's still conversation about moving it even later into June, but right now I believe it's May the 19th. You should have received this in the mail. Secure your vote. This is your absentee ballot application. I strongly encourage everyone, just so that you are following the shelter in place and that you don't have to get out in crowds, to please fill out your absentee ballot application. It's very simple. Make sure you fill out every single thing that applies to you. This can be mailed as well. Follow the instructions, which are right there at the top. Follow each and every instruction. Make sure that you sign this application. If you put it in the mail, make sure that you follow the instructions on securing it with tape. The Postal Service requires that. Or you can take a picture of it or scan it, and it also tells you how you can send it in that way if you don't want to do it in the mail. So again, census, absentee ballot application. And when you do get your ballot, don't forget the most. You got this in your water bill from our Department of Watershed Management that explains the Municipal Option Sales Tax, MOST, most. That's what we call it for short. We are renewing this. It's a 1% sales tax. What this allows is for us to be able to pay for our major infrastructure costs and keep us from having to raise water rates. As you remember, we had a consent decree from the federal government that required us to do billions of dollars of infrastructure work, particularly as it dealt with sewage overflows into the river and creeks. And that threw our rates out of whack because we did not get assistance from the federal government. So the municipal option sales tax was one way that we used to fund it, and this has helped us. Even though we have one of the highest water sewer rates in the country, this is how we were able to keep the water rates low. So please look at this information, vote as you wish. 1% sales tax on most, but this is more information and it will be on your ballot. I have a question. How do homeless families vote? They can vote the same way if they're registered to vote. If they have not received, they do not have an address, or the address that they have is old, they are not going to get this in the mail, of course. They can either get it from the Fulton County or DeKalb County Registration Office, or call the Secretary of State's office if they have an address now that they can get it to, or they can request it from Fulton or DeKalb County, requested. I'm assuming that they will take the phone calls. Of course, for homeless individuals, if you don't have a permanent address, it does make it more difficult. Absentee ballot applications. What are we supposed to do for box 10? Let's look and see what box 10 has, Jennifer. Box 10, eligibility. Let me get my glasses to make sure I'm reading this correctly. Eligibility to receive votes by mail ballots for the rest of the election cycle without another application. So that is if you always want to, from now on, to vote by absentee ballot. And then it asks you if you're elderly, disabled, a uniformed service member, and then you mark one of the others. So if you're elderly, 65 or older, you can check that box, and that means that every time there is an election, you will automatically receive in the mail the absentee ballot, or if you're disabled with a physical disability, or if you're in the military. Otherwise, you would have to apply or ask for an application. I hope that answers your question. Should we expect a significant decline in most revenues due to the economic downturn? Of course. I mean, if people are not out spending money, then that will be less that we will receive. Nobody has any projections because we're not sure at this point in time how much longer we will be in a shutdown mode. I will say this, that the longer it takes for us to get our act together and to shut down, the longer it's going to take for us to get to a point that we deal with it. And so I'll take a point of privilege right now, and we'll be posting this right after I'm done. But at 3 o'clock today, I will be doing another Facebook Live. I won't be answering questions like we're doing here, but I just want to share some thoughts that I have about COVID-19 and some suggestions that I think that we as elected officials and citizens can do to make this better. So please tune in at 3 p.m. Let's see if anyone else has a question before I get to my other comments. Hello, Ms. Caban. Given current epidemic, the risk of our 4,000 unsheltered present to their own health and public as carriers, is City of Atlanta going to allow tiny house camps and ease restrictions on secondary dwellings and backyards? So the tiny house concept is one that will take a lot more than that I think that we can get done in this particular cycle, because it will require, Robbie, for us to make some adjustments to our zoning laws as well as some adjustments to zoning classifications. I know that there are some areas where there have been proposals to change some single-family neighborhoods to allow accessory dwellings, and they have not met with good favorability from some neighborhoods. So that's something that's bigger. However, I do have a proposal that I will talk a little bit about. Oops, almost knocked my phone over. That I will talk a little bit about at 3 p.m. The unsheltered homeless is a population that desperately needs to be brought into and addressed in this conversation. And I'll talk a little bit more about that at 3 o'clock p.m. and look forward to hearing a little bit more about a proposal that I'm putting out there to be able to safely and make sure they have safety and sanitation during this issue. If you go downtown, and I am sheltering in place, and I'm in my car, I'm not rolling down the windows or getting out, but I do get out just to make sure I see what's happening in the community. And if you go downtown in particular, and I'm sure in your neighborhoods as well, we do see many of our unsheltered individuals out and about, and they're about the only ones there. And so we need to make sure that we are addressing their needs. Let's see. Yeah. And yes, people do need to stay home. Council, this is from Coleman Tyler. Councilmember Brown tweeted following. Let's see. I'm working with a manufacturer of COVID-19 testing kits that can be mailed or handed out to those that aren't being tested because of capacity issues. Okay. This will, and I'm trying to, but I'm not able, okay. This will allow us to test and get results fast digitally without spreading the virus. Okay, if that's something he tweeted out, that sounds like a good thing, so we'll have to see how he's able to implement that, because testing is a big issue. I know that from our healthcare providers, I've gotten emails and concerns from them, in addition to the normal one about equipment and PPE, which is personal protective equipment for them to use, face masks, gowns, etc. Another big issue is testing and their ability to get tested so that they know, because they are exposed to the virus, whether or not they have the virus. Because when they leave work, they go home and they're with their families, or some of them are opting not to even go home and be with their families. So not only are they working horrendous hours, they're not able to connect with their family and friends because they're not sure if they're COVID free or not. And so testing is a big issue for everyone. And unfortunately, across the country, it's a big issue. We're not being tested. So the numbers that we're seeing are those who've been tested, but there are many of us who need tests, want tests, and we're not able to get tests. So if he's able to find a way to get people more tests, I'm all for it. And we'll have to look to Mr. Brown to explain to this. Is this a city or county initiative? Can any update on testing? Again, testing is a federal issue as well as a state and local issue, because there are guidelines that they have now in terms of who can be tested and who is priority in tested. And also getting those tests out. There is a new test, which is great, which is a rapid test. The test that people have been taking, they've had to wait 5 days for results, which is a long time. But now they have a test that you can find out in 15 minutes. And I know that I just heard on national news that they're building these kits 5,000 or so a day, which is not a lot. And so I'm not sure how readily available they are and can get out, but that is an issue that we have to be mindful of. Is the city working with APS to ensure that all students have internet access? I know that Maria Karstarfin, the superintendent, has been working tirelessly. Actually, I've texted her a few times and told her she needs to get some rest because she has been working tirelessly to make sure the students have internet access. She has asked the mayor to use whatever leverage she could, and I know she's asked other elected officials to do the same. We know that Comcast has provided a free internet access service. I know they were working on getting laptops. So the city, I hope that we are in our administration working to help her make sure that we get access across the city. I do know that there are still some areas that are having challenges. Gary Harris. I did a survey of food service locations in my community to access implementation of social distance measures by those establishments. I found a very wide variation in implementation of such measures. How can we ensure consistency to maximize public safety? I'll talk very briefly on some of these things at 3 o'clock. But one of the things I do think that we need to do is to make sure that the establishments that are open, whether they be takeout, grocery stores, or others, are doing the best that they can to make sure that people are implementing social distancing. And I'll talk about what I think the city should do in that regard. Some stores are doing it on their own. For instance, Walmart and I think Home Depot and some other stores, I'm understanding, are limiting the number of people that can be in the store at one time, which is great. And I've seen where some stores are now marking 6 feet intervals for people to stand in line. They have monitors and making sure people are standing in line. They're putting up plexiglass between you and the cashier to try to help them. But I do think there are a few other things that can be done. And over and above the governor's executive order, I think there are things that we can order as a city to make people safe. Hello, Mr. Boyd. You asked, how am I doing during this? Am I okay? I am just fine. I finally went ahead and posted, as you all may have seen, there was an article where I said voluntarily, and it was a voluntary thing, went into self-isolation. I attended earlier this month the National League of Cities Conference in Washington, D.C. A week after I got back, we began to get notifications from our organization that 3 people had tested positive for COVID-19. Of course, it did not identify the people. They did not identify sessions they had been to, and I think I may have been to 1 or 2 that they had mentioned that they had been to. I self-isolated for 14 days, myself as well, Council Member Shepherd, who had attended, just in an overabundance of caution to make sure that we had not been exposed, because you never know whose space you're sharing and who you're sharing it with. I am fine. I have no symptoms, neither did Miss Shepherd, so we're just fine. I'm doing okay, and I plan to stay okay. I'm staying at home. I'm sheltering in place, and I'm taking the precautions when I go out in public to get groceries, to make sure I'm wearing a mask and staying my distance from crowds and from people. So I hope everyone is doing the same. The more you stay home, the more you stay isolated with your family or whoever you're with, the less likely you are to add to the numbers, which I don't have them right in front of me, but our hospitals are being overwhelmed. We have not gotten to the point where we're reaching that peak. And we don't want people infected so that you are so ill that you have to go to the hospital and put more strain on our already strained healthcare workers. So Ms. Howe says that CVS is doing testing. Okay, hello, Felicia Moore. I hope all is well. Let's see. Let me get all your comments. Will the homeless at Hartsfield Jackson still be allowed to sleep in the atrium? And what about outside homeless people as well? They are very vulnerable to COVID. They have limited resources and no place to go, and the airport is deserted now. So they are not supposed to be at the airport. There is a HOPE team that is there at the airport when they encounter people who do not have homes there, and they're getting them services and providing services to them. There's no one in the airport at this point, so I doubt if there are many. I have not heard that they're still going out to the airport, but there are teams of people there to assist them. I mentioned earlier the unsheltered, and I said I will be proposing one thing. I know we're dealing with those in the shelters. We have several individuals that are already in our shelters. We've had a few that have tested positive, one unfortunately that has passed away. Shelters have a unique situation because you try to maximize the space by allowing as many people as possible to be there. And now the shelters are working to distance those that are there, as well as there is a hotel that the Partners for Home has identified and is up and operating, where they are using it to isolate them, to give them a room for those who have tested positive, as well as making sure they get medical services and testing for all of those in the shelter. Now, those who are outside the shelter, I'll talk a little bit more about that at 3 o'clock, some suggestions that I have for that. But that is the next line that we need to really deal with to be able to help them. I hear from those who provide services or doing outreach on the streets to those that many are ill. Of course, we don't know if they had COVID or not, and we're going to have to find housing. And the hotels are one good place if we're able to strike agreements with them, because many of our hotels are empty at this point, and other areas that we can do that. But, we can address this issue. I'll just put this out here for the short term. But for the long term, we're going to have to look at where we're going to house people. That's going to have to be something in the long term. And while people ask questions and are concerned about our unsheltered and the people that don't have homes, we have to also be willing to open up our neighborhoods and our communities to facilities and housing for these individuals. Hello, Miss Tyler. Oh, I'm losing my power on my other device. But what is the status of Channel 26? And what is the status of Channel 26? And can it be used to provide live person updates and public service announcements on COVID-19? Yes, it could and it should. And I'm going to tell you now that some council members have expressed concern about the utilization of Channel 26. It could be a very good vehicle to get information out, and we're not at this point using it in that way, but believe me, that conversation will still be had. Also, I want to, something else, I just lost my mind. I lost it off my mind, but we will be pushing to do that. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Tomorrow at 11:30 on the Atlanta City Council page, you will be able to hear. We will be having a phone conversation. We, as in the council, with the mayor at 11:30 tomorrow, and so I'm sure that question will come up. Mr. Jordan, thank you for this call weekly. We appreciate all you do. What is the rule with restaurants? Should beer and wine be only be sold? I'm seeing restaurants selling spirits as well. I will have to find that answer. We'll post the answer here if we can figure it out. As you all know, and my other computer went out because I had a whole long list of things to tell you all, but you've asked me so many questions. I'm getting close to the end of time, but we will really have to look to the governor's order. The governor's order made it very clear that his order superseded any local ordinance, any local orders. So where the city's order said one thing, we have to abide by what's in the governor's order. So we have to look to that to find the answer to your question. That also relates to parks, because many people have been asking about shutting down the Beltline or other parks and locations where people are gathering, and I'm not understanding why you're still doing that. I just don't get why people don't get it, and if you're going to gather, why you can't distance. But neither here nor there. We have to go with whatever the governor's order says at this time. And thank you, Mr. Harris, for thanking me for my service. When is the next full council meeting, and will it be on Facebook Live? Thank you for everything you do. You're welcome. So tomorrow at 11:30, we will have a phone conversation and update with the mayor. You can get that by going to the Atlanta City Council webpage. And I think my staff also shares it on this page and my other medium, but you can go to Atlanta City Council page and you will be able to hear. Hopefully we'll get a notice that we can post on this page. Staff, we need to get a notice so that we can post it. They also have a call-in number where you can listen by phone if you're not on Facebook. And I know it's on Facebook and on Twitter as well. So the next full council meeting will be on April 20th. The council is not having any committee meetings or council meetings during the spring, and we meet on April the 20th. That will be our next full council meeting. It will be on Facebook, on Instagram. It will be done remotely. We will not be meeting physically because we are practicing social distancing. I heard that on GPB, the COVID-19 reports are Metro Atlanta and include Sandy Springs and other cities. Is city-specific data available? I am not sure. I'm not sure about that. The Georgia Department of Public Health is the one that puts out the information, and I don't know if they do it specifically for the jurisdictional limits of the city of Atlanta, but we will post and have posted the information we receive. And yes, we do need to discuss long-term solutions, Ms. Ward. Have you heard that people are working that may be sick, but their boss is still making them work? I've heard people, and I've heard concerns from employees on their exposure, their potential exposure of getting sick because they don't have personal protective equipment or PPEs or masks or things that they think that they need. And I haven't heard specifically that someone thinks someone is sick and they're still being worked. But people should, if you feel that you are ill, you should not be working. And many people are spreading it. They don't know that they're sick. But if you feel that you have symptoms, you should be able to use your sick leave or get out. So let's see. Why doesn't medical expertise supersede the governor's orders, especially while lives are at risk and have been lost? Again, the governor is the governor, and he is an elected official. We all elect our elected representatives. We give them the power and the authority and the influence to work on our behalf. And so, the governor's office, I'm sure, as I heard the lieutenant governor on CNN or one of them earlier today saying that he is relying on medical expertise and advice. And so I'm sure, as many of you know, it's easy to have an opinion, but these opinions are formulated from a variety of sources. And so we would have to lean to the governor and any other elected official, for that matter, who's in the position of authority in terms of the decisions they make. And to the extent that you are not happy with those decisions, then you should reach out, call his office, send him emails if you beg to differ. So it is 1:30. I was not able to get through the list of things that I wanted to discuss with you. So I guess we will roll that over until the next time. Please make sure you like this page. Tune in at 3 o'clock. I will not be taking questions, but I had a lot on my mind about this COVID-19. Wanted to really dedicate this to the people, which I'm calling our healthcare warriors and our essential soldiers that are out there every day. From our city employees, we thank them, who are still providing services, and to those healthcare workers. So you'll hear me talk more about that at 3 o'clock. Again, parks and the Beltline, all of that order is now under the governor's, and I believe parks and recreation facilities in his order are open. And so we as a city, because he put a clear provision in there that cities cannot supersede his order, which you may have heard Tybee Island and Jekyll Island, and some of them are pretty upset because it has opened up the beaches when they had previously closed them. But that is what his order is. It goes until mid-April. Maybe he will make changes later. Let's see. And Mr. Jones, I did mention the homeless earlier. Tune in at 3 o'clock. I'll talk a little bit about that. Again, thank you all for joining. I will be here again next Monday at 1 o'clock. But today, you can tune in. I will not take questions, but I will like to share and sort of get off of my chest and release some things that I want to about our healthcare, our warriors, and our essential soldiers, and things you can do and elected officials can do and the city can do, I think, to help us in this crisis we're in with COVID-19. Please stay safe, stay at home unless necessary, wear a mask or some facial covering if you go outside, and I'll see you at 3 o'clock today, and again at 1 p.m. next Monday, and then tomorrow you can listen in on the Atlanta City Council page for our conversation, being the council with the mayor. Thank you.